let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
To be Muslim in New York is to expect indignity. But indignity does not make us distinct. There are many New Yorkers who face it. It is the tolerance of that indignity that does.
What is he even talking about? Is this the guy that doesn't like the Jewish community, despises Israel? 9 days to go with 3 impactful races still up for grabs. The mayor of New York City, just heard from the front runner. Virginia, New Jersey, governor's races tighten up. We're going to look at the backstretch strategies.
Number 2.
Is this a trade-off you're willing to make and continue to make, letting some Americans go hungry until these Obamacare subsidies get extended?
Well, let's be clear. We're shut down right now because Republicans are refusing to even talk to Democrats.
Really? Shut down day 27. Air travel, food stamps, worker pay, all affected. Seems like even the left-wing hosts on the Sunday shows are beginning to realize this is a Democratic foolhardy folly.
Number 1.
They're not saying we have a deal. They're not saying, if you have a scorecard. They're not saying just purchase $50 billion of soybeans. Or they're not saying China just agreed to stop its Navy patrols. None of that's happening.
That is true, Mike Pillsbury, and he's always skeptical, and he's right to be, and he is a China expert. President Trump in an impactful Far East trip. First stop, Malaysia, a success. Today in Japan, off to a great start. Thursday's meeting with President Xi will have huge impact on trade, our economy, and our military. And right now, the markets seem to be responding positively, already up 253 points. Hey, Griff, so far, what's different about this, and I understand Mike Pillsbury's skepticism, is China also had an optimistic statement. They says the two sides have recorded preliminary consensus on key elements of a deal.
Yeah, listen, when I read that Scott Bessent is a soybean farmer himself, I thought, man, that's the tell.
What do you mean by that? That he's an investor in a soybean farm?
He did. And Scott Bessent has said, the secretary has said that I'm a soybean farmer. Yeah. I've been hit. I've been affected. Why? Because last year.
Actually, you want to hear him say it? Yeah. Cut 3.
I'm actually a soybean farmer, so I have felt this pain too. And there are a couple of things happening here. One, the Chinese have substantially dropped their purchases to almost zero. So they unfortunately have been using American farmers who are amongst President Trump's biggest supporters. I think he had more than 90% support. And then this was one of the biggest crops in 20 or 30 years, so it was a perfect storm. But I think we have addressed the farmers' concerns.
Yeah, significant there. And, when you look at last year, China bought $13 billion worth of soybeans. This year, as you heard from Bessent, it's zero. This is a real, painful impact.
And why farmers? Because they looked at, China thinks that's the base of President Trump.
Sure. And listen, I mean, look, China is a adversary that has a lot of leverage. I mean, we're kidding ourselves if we don't approach it from that position. But at the end of the day, I think the fact that you did have Jameson Greer and Bessent get over there and get this framework on the rare earth minerals and the soybeans and other things, now they present that basically to their bosses. It's like the staff gets together, writes the bill, and then take it to the boss to get the sign off to put it into action. So will it change a little bit? Maybe. But if at least the core principles in agreement amongst the two-sided staff, I think we could be actually headed towards something.
So since they out of nowhere, and I was shocked by this because they were going to the technical part of the deal. I think it was like their 5th meeting. And I thought they were just going to get set to make a big announcement on this trip. And then 2 weeks ago, they come out and say, we're going to suspend all rare earth to the U.S. What are you talking about? Suspend it. Where'd that come from? And they go back and forth, and there's all these different theories. And one of the theories was that President Xi didn't know about it. I don't buy into that theory, but someone underneath. But there was a firing of somebody that Bessent was dealing with on the China side since that statement. Because if you go, hey, we're going to stop rare earth, that's our phones, that's our military, that's all electronics, it's the AI. AI. So it was brought up to me to look into one area. In 72 hours after that announcement, we set up a deal with Malaysia on a middle contract. We set up a deal with Thailand to sign a processing deal. The framework, then we also went to Australia. They came here, and we agreed to a $13 billion rare earth processing. And because of their relationship with Cambodia, we got the Cambodian extraction rights. and we beginning to move immediately to be in control of our own destiny when it comes to rare earth. So they must be saying to themselves, wow, that was our lever point. The other lever point is taking over the South China Sea. But China's real estate is collapsing. No one's living in these cities. And this new generation's not getting jobs and not available. And there's a whole bunch of people here who do not have any security net. They don't have Social Security like we have. They don't have 401ks. So they're not spending on anything because they're unsure of what's going to happen next in China.
They're also not having babies, by the way. We covered that. Remember, China was growing like crazy. Now they're not.
One-child policy.
One-child policy. The legacy of that is coming back to haunt them. But I think you touched on something important, which is China does, and you and I were talking a little bit about this before the radio show at a break on Fox and Friends, and that is China really has some strength and some leverage, if you will, insofar as doing these export controls, right? They come up with these export controls. They do that to smaller countries, and there's nothing that those countries can do. They're just getting bullied. Whereas with the U.S., we can stand up to that. We have other ways to push back. But in the big picture, which I think is often missed, it's not just China's dominance in the South China Sea, but look, China has shipping lanes worldwide. We are playing catch up on that. We are seeing President Trump and the administration really lean into trying to take over dominance of the Western Hemisphere again. We're going to hear a lot more about that. Why? Because China was there. The Monroe Doctrine basically wanted to stop European colonization in the Western Hemisphere. Now, President Trump is trying to take away the influence of China.
Right. Also, TikTok deal, that looks like it's done, we think, but I'd like to see the details of it. We own 8% of it. The algorithm comes here. China will own 20%, but everyone wants to know, are they going to be controlling it? And I think that's we have to see the whole deal in front of us. Here's what Congressman John Molinar said from Michigan when asked about this China deal. Remember, Congress passed a law that they said we got to get rid of it, or they got to get banned in the U.S. if they don't sell it. Cut 9.
As long as the Chinese are involved, I think there's reasons for distrust. And
even with the 20% stake,
I'm still concerned about it. Quite frankly, the Chinese report to the Chinese Communist Party, and they will leverage every advantage they get. But the president has set a goal of making this available to the American people, following the law that was passed in a bipartisan way. And I trust that they are doing that.
And my main problem with this is not only with the data they can get from us and find out what we think and how to manipulate us, let alone our Social Security numbers and things to that effect, but I also worry about their manipulating the news feed. They're finding out and actually choreographing what the next generation, since mostly young people use TikTok, 176 million they say are their users. You're not going to see any positive Israel stories. You're not going to see any positive Taiwan stories. You're not going to see, when we're in tough times with China, you're not going to see much promising American stories. But it won't be flagrant. It'll be subtle. And that's how they can mold the American mind. There's laws against it with networks. We got to do the same thing with apps.
Well, and the argument is that it's the algorithm. The algorithm does that, right? Because TikTok in China is very different than TikTok in the U.S. In the U.S., we get like...
But you think it's an honest algorithm? They can work that algorithm to manipulate what we see.
In American hands, it might be trustworthy. And I think your spyware, I mean, remember, so many of the people that are now supporting President Trump on TikTok were the biggest critics, senators, congressmen. They were saying, we got to get rid of it, and hence the law to get rid of TikTok altogether. But I was at Mar-a-Lago during the transition, just happened to be as a reporter covering for that week, and President Trump had a conversation or a press conference. And one of the reporters said, hey, what about TikTok? All of a sudden he said, I kind of like TikTok. TikTok was good. We're going to save TikTok. Now here we are, however many months later, with a possible deal out there. At the end of the day, I got on TikTok during COVID, Brian, to just participate with my daughters who love TikTok. It is the young generation. And ultimately, I don't know how you completely alleviate the Chinese threat of somehow being able to do the spyware. But in terms of the algorithm and programming, I think you could probably get control of that.
Yeah, I'll have to see. I need some tech experts to analyze this deal and let me know, because I saw Mike Gallagher as well as leading Democrats agree on one thing. that this is bad for America, and they have a different version of TikTok in China, and they don't have Facebook in China. They don't have Twitter in China. There's a reason. They have no interest of their people seeing other points of view that they can't control.
Well, and, at the end of the day, with, 25, 30% or more of all of our young people getting their news, their information from TikTok, not necessarily Facebook or Instagram, but specifically the TikTokers, you can't compete with the reality. So you got to lean into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just had Senator Lindsey Graham on earlier, and this statement about the Venezuela strikes, when I see these people are just so out of their minds with everything the president does is wrong. And now Ruben Gallego on over the weekend, because he's a veteran, he likes to point out that Donald Trump isn't, which any type of tact on Vietnam and the whole draft thing, I think is done, but not to Gallego. He says this about what the president's doing, blowing up these drug ships and putting our hardware into in and around Venezuela, Cut 31.
No, it's murder. It's very simple. If this president feels that they're doing something illegally, then he should be using the Coast Guard. If there's an act of war, then you use our military, and then you come and talk to us first. But this is murder. It's sanctioned murder that he is doing that. And it's very simple for someone like him to talk about killing people or doing something in the name of war. He's never actually served. He's never actually pulled a trigger. And it's very dangerous what he's doing.
I mean, did he feel that way about Barack Obama blowing up people all around the world in Syria, Al-Awlaki, in Africa? I mean, I don't think that he weighed in when he was in Congress. Do you?
No. And, that I heard that soundbite this morning, and I was blown away because the president has literally changed the paradigm. For years, it was, as Gallego says, a law enforcement footing, right? They would go out with Coast Guard. They would go out and apprehend, drug interdiction. DEA did a lot of work. But how successful was that? It put a tiny dent in the millions of Americans that have died from drug overdoses, fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, you name it. Now, the president, and particularly in labeling, many of these organizations as terrorist organizations, FTOs, now the president said, no. We're not going to arrest you anymore. You're going to be, quote, dead, in the president's words. And over the weekend, Tulsi Gabbard came on with us, Brian, and she said, this is the director of national intelligence. She said that now the National Counterterrorism Center, the NCTC, is actually getting involved, helping out. This is the organization.
And the CIA's there anyway.
That could, map who the terror organizations were in the Middle East. They're applying that now to the cartels and organizations bringing drugs into the U.S.
Lindsey Graham was direct with us, and he said basically it's the most irresponsible thing that he's heard from a senator to date. And he also said this, Cut 33.
You got a commander-in-chief's not going to put up with this crap. We're not going to sit on the sidelines and watch boats full of drugs come to our country. We're going to blow them up and kill the people that want to poison America. And we're now going to expand operations, I think, to the land. So please be clear about what I'm saying today. President Donald Trump sees Venezuela and Colombia as direct threats to our country because they house narco-terrorist organizations. The leader of Venezuela is an indicted drug dealer in American courts. So, yeah, the game is changing.
Your thoughts?
My thoughts are you just made news there because striking on land we haven't seen. But so far with the boats, the narco-terror boats, we've seen 10 taken out, 43 people killed, and it is sending such a different message to those organizations that this is going to continue. This is now how it's going to be. And so we'll see if this moves into the land stuff. That does change things a little bit. But one thing's for sure, this is a total paradigm shift in how they deal with the drug cartels.
So I'll see you on Wednesday on Fox and Friends. Where else can we see you, Griff?
I'll be with you and Outnumbered tomorrow.
Outnumbered tomorrow. Fantastic. Yep. Back in a moment. Brian Kilmeade Show. Don't move. Tami Overby joins us now. Tami, what do you think so far?
I think the president is off to a very productive trip. It's going to be a long trip, but he signed several trade deals and critical mineral deals in Malaysia yesterday. So I think we're off to a great week.
terms of, this is what Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, told me today. He goes, Brian, look out for that word framework, because there's so much to fill in when they say framework, especially with the Chinese. But they have been drilling down on specific things like TikTok. They have been drilling down by They're talking about soybeans, and Bessent basically said, I got some good news for the farmers when it comes to soybeans. And that's just purchase what you need. We have the best product at the best price, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The framework deals, there is more to be done, but he's also announcing some done deals. Malaysia and Cambodia are done. He did say that Vietnam and Thailand, okay, those are framework agreements. There's still more to do. But with a country as big as China and all the challenges we face, frankly, a framework agreement that gets us another delay in the tariffs is a good thing. And again, I'm really encouraged by the stuff I'm hearing about critical minerals, signing deals with Malaysia, with Cambodia, with Thailand. This is great for America.
So this is so interesting. So a lot of times people have cautioned me too, who are geologists, when people say, well, we got a rare earth deal. They say, well, so much has to be done. You got to mine it, you got to refine it, you got to mill it. Yep. And a lot of times that's got to go to other countries, and we don't have a lot of refineries, and environmentalists get involved. But yours encouraged about Malaysia and Cambodia and Australia as others are.
I am, because Malaysia, for example, is talking about also reprocessing. So they have rare earth minerals in their ground, and they want to be able to reprocess it for us. So, and again, Australia, same. So I think we're making progress. This is very complicated. So many products contain rare earths, and China for way too long has had too much of a chokehold on the world. So I'm delighted to see U.S. leadership bringing other like-minded countries together. Let's sort this out. Let's not give anybody that kind of a chokehold.
How did we let that happen? Does it astound you? And this is what you do for a living. This is the area of the world you study. We knew in the 90s, I was reading some of this thing on Bloomberg on Friday, and we had the most productive mill out in California, and we just shut it down. And we allowed GM to sell off a lot of their rare earth production facilities to China. The government said, okay, go ahead, GM, you can do it. How could people have not said this could be a problem? Did we not anticipate this age that was coming?
You know, I think some of us got it wrong. Some people thought when China joined the WTO 25 years ago, this is a great thing. They're going to be good friends, like-minded partners. Well, it didn't turn out that way. China joined, but they do everything with, under the sort of Chinese way. And that's very different from the American way. We are rule followers. When we make commitments, we honor them. It's not true in all parts of the world. So I think some people just got it wrong.
And very smart people too. And some of which are Henry Kissinger, correct?
Exactly. I mean, again, China is a huge player. They're the second largest economy. They're growing their military so fast. We have to take them seriously. But we also need to realize that the rest of the world is also very worried about China, and they trust America. So we need to ensure that our alliances and our relationships with these like-minded countries remain strong.
This is why you're optimistic and I'm optimistic. I listened to Scott Bessent, and this is what he said. He said it on 3 separate channels. I think he wants to get that across to the markets. Cut one.
So this was the 5th meeting that I've had with my Chinese counterpart, the Vice Premier, Hu Lifeng, and we covered a wide range of issues, and I think we've reached a substantial framework for the 2 leaders who will meet in Korea next Thursday. So, on the table, the president had given me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth global export controls. So I think we have averted that, so that the tariffs will be averted.
So he thinks that worked. Now let me ask you, Tami, where are the Chinese vulnerable? Looking at their economy, where are they vulnerable? Maybe like they haven't been in the past.
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that the Trump administration is really drilling down deep in. On technology, they still need our technology. Whether, they're making some good chips, and DeepSeek, I think, shocked a lot of Americans on how advanced it was. But when you get down to the latest and greatest technology, it's still coming from the U.S. So we need to maintain that leverage and that advantage by by investing more in R&D in the U.S. and making sure our American tech companies are strong, which the president seems very focused on.
The other thing is I hear about their real estate, especially commercial real estate, just withering on the vine. There's just nothing to fill up these factories. These cities remain empty, that young people aren't getting jobs. They seem unmotivated. And without a social safety net, they're unwilling to be aggressive consumers of our products. That's why smart people have told me, don't expect them to buy a whole lot of American stuff. They don't have a lot of discretionary spending, and they're concerned about their future because there is no safety net.
And that's a very good point. They're still trying to, they've lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty over the last 2 decades, but they've got a long way to go, and they need to really increase domestic consumption. But if your citizens don't have confidence in where the country's going, they're nervous, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And again, there are not a lot of new jobs being created in China. You've got these empty apartment buildings, these empty office buildings. China, they're on a charm offensive now, and they'll be this way at least for the next 18 months. They host APEC next year. Xi Jinping is gone all over Southeast Asia. He's making the rounds now around the world, and he's talking about APEC and hosting APEC, but it's really about he needs foreign investment in China.
Right, but he's not going to get many foreigners living in China. They've made it a place that is not hospitable to the outside world, and he didn't seem to care about it. And for a while, he seemed to have gotten rid of all free market incentives. And I think he's bringing some of that back, perhaps. But you're the expert. What is the problem? Why does South Korea and Japan hate each other so much?
Okay, they got some bad history. Japan invaded South Korea in the early 1900s, and they basically took over Korea. They gave every Korean a Japanese name. They tried to erase the Korean language. Many people, they've heard the stories from their grandparents. So there's a lot of bad history. But thankfully, fortunately, finally, South Korea and Japan are beginning to stop looking backwards and start looking forward. And I think the U.S. has been very helpful in that, in our trilateral approach. And again, having President Trump on the ground in Japan for 2 days and then in Korea for 2 days, I think he can help continue that warm feelings, because we got new leaders in both South Korea and Japan.
So that would help, and they'd have to be allies because they have a common enemy, and we know that brings people together.
Yep.
And that would be China. Now, the president said, I'm open to talking to Kim Jong-un about his nuclear program. If this guy's free, I'll go talk to him. Now, you came up through the traditional world of diplomacy. How do you feel about Trump breaking that norm, being open to it? Are you curious about it?
I'm fine with that. I think that as long as we're not shooting at one another, talking is good. And President Trump he doesn't follow the traditional pathways. He does things unexpectedly. And I know many people were shocked that he's had 3 meetings with Kim Jong-un. But I think those relationships are important. And, if he can get Kim to the table and potentially get him to seriously talk about denuclearizing the peninsula, that would be great news for the world.
So you would be for it?
Absolutely.
So here's Scott Bessent on I'm going to go to Congressman John Moolenaar of Michigan. You hear about this TikTok deal. What I'm concerned about is a foreign country, especially our enemy, China, or our competitor, depending on what school you're in, having control of the news feed for 170 million Americans, among other things. Here is Congressman Moolenaar from what we know about the deal that's about to be done. Cut 9.
As long as the Chinese are involved, I think there's reasons for distrust. And
even with the 20% stake.
I'm still concerned about it. Quite frankly, the Chinese report to the Chinese Communist Party, and they will leverage every advantage they get. But the president has set a goal of making this available to the American people, following the law that was passed in a bipartisan way. And I trust that they are doing that.
So I'm skeptical, too. I don't know the details of it. I love the fact that the head of Oracle is running it, is one of the investors. And I think Lachlan Murdoch is one of the investors. Obviously, I think that's a great move. But I'm just worried about who controls the algorithm, to be able to read what Americans think, how we can be manipulated. What are you worried about the TikTok deal?
Well, Brian, like you, I'm a little bit skeptical because as I read the TikTok data, the information about it, China will ByteDance, the Chinese company, will maintain the algorithm. And that makes me nervous because, we both know how easy it is to change that algorithm. And suddenly what I'm reading as a TikTok user, it doesn't, it's the wrong thing, or it's being influenced by the Chinese Communist Party. So I think that is a concern. But again, I have confidence in the U.S. officials. I think they are also very worried about that. And they're doing everything they can to put in safeguards to prevent that. And let's face it, with all of the technology in our lives now, everybody knows everything about what I'm doing anyway. I mean, my Apple phone knows everything.
Yeah. But we would never let China buy ABC or Fox. So
not as long as you're there, Brian.
Thank
no
you.
Way.
Right. They can buy ABC without my permission, according to reports. But I would just think we have to make a rule for the next TikTok that comes through. If it's Russian or South, I don't care who it is. You can't be a major news source in America, and the App Store can handle that. Thanks, Tami. Great to see you. Thanks so much for your insight. And
my pleasure.
Occam's razor comes into play here in the sense that how many times have we spent Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday talking about the phantom call in the NFL game or the late field goal that covers the spread? A lot of times when you look for a complicated answer, it generally is the most basic one, but this has done to professional sports what the NIL did to college sports. The NIL just made it legal for all the things that were happening already illegally. You're talking about $70 billion. It's not going to change. It's not going to go away. You saw 2 Cleveland pitchers who were suspended this year for literally throwing games in a sense.
So that is Curt Schilling. He was on with me on One Nation Sunday night, your favorite show, Sunday at 10. And I had him on with Michael Franzese, who was with the Colombo crime family, and his dad was one of the founding members of it. And that dad went to jail for a long time, and so did he, and he got out because he decided to help out. But he was able to unwind, come on with us. Obviously, he's a free guy with a successful podcast. He's been in our studio before, and talk about how susceptible professional athletes are and how valuable they are in what's happening with gambling. What's going on with gambling? Well, you got 2 indictments. You got 2 different paths. You got one is the card game with the X-ray deaths and the crooked shuffler, and then you have people giving away cards, and then you have what they call, they'll have an athlete there, and they'll track big-time rollers to games because they'll think, I get a chance to meet an athlete, play poker with them, and I'm great at poker. Well, they all started losing. And then over the weekend, this one story came out. This alleged victim says, I lost $1 million. But they said the report was Antonio Gates, one of the best tight ends to ever play the game with the San Diego Chargers, now the Los Angeles Chargers. Sports investigative journalist Pablo Torre reported Sunday that it was Antonio Gates who allegedly rigged the game that was organized by Curtis Meeks. Curtis Meeks is the guy with the X-ray table, and he's probably one of the masterminds behind all this evil stuff, who was indicted. So Antonio Gates allegedly hosted and played in the rigged game that happened in Miami. So these guys lost millions of dollars, and in case they wanted to act up or speak out, the mob's involved to, number 1, collect, and number 2, provide security and keep people's mouths shut. So when I asked Michael Franzese about the 4 crime families, not the Colombo crime family he was involved in, and how they came together, is that odd for them to come together on this? This is what he said, cut 48.
Athletes are always a target because we can get them sometimes to compromise the outcome of the game. They get in trouble, quite often. I had 12 bookmakers working under me. That's why they recruited me, because they knew I had athletes gambling with me at the time. So none of this surprises me. The fact that the 4 families are involved, normally they don't do that. But they must have seen something here. And I know it spreads across a couple of states. So I can tell you this. I guarantee you this is only the tip of the iceberg.
Wow. So they think more is going to happen. And then over the weekend, we find out more people are coming out and saying they took advantage of me. Rasheed Wallace came out over the weekend, too. And he's somebody who was a good player in North Carolina, but he was always volatile, always getting thrown out of games. He says it's a bigger story with referees and that emails are out there and that the league covered it up. I'm saying, oh, my goodness. Now you got football involved, not football the league, but retired player, football legend. And the NBA, we see what happens with 3 players, 2 coaches, 1 former player, well, 3 are former players, but one coach of the Trailblazers, another coach that was a former teammate of LeBron James, able to call up LeBron James and say, hey, LeBron, you playing today? Oh, you're not? Great. Oh, just stay healthy, buddy. And then they call the bookmakers and say, hey, LeBron James is playing. LeBron James is out. His ankle's still bothering him. He's going to try to struggle through it. Now, think about LeBron James. He's not involved at all, but his name's in this because of somebody he thought was his friend. Now, why this guy, I think his name is Damon Jones, why he would think that that's a good idea. I think he made $23 million in his career. So a former member of the Genovese crime family, Anthony Arreglata, said this on Fox and Friends about the mafia involved in gambling, cut 47.
The poker started getting more bigger when the casinos started coming around everywhere, popping up and, all over the place. So people could go to the casinos and bet blackjack and all those type of games. But poker, people like to play poker. That's where you could get rooms to have poker games. The mafia liked it because they could rake the pots. And they also like to have big name celebrities, basketball players, baseball players come as a draw. So people would be like, oh, we're playing, poker with so-and-so showing up. Yeah. So it was a draw to, get the game going and make the mafia money.
Yeah. So this is going to be big. Over the weekend, Stephen A. Smith, one of the most respected commentators in sports, came out and said, I think Trump's behind it because the basketball players took a knee or didn't vote for him or something. I don't know. And then he was called out by Kash Patel, and he doubled down. He goes, listen, I think in a few months they're going to come back and say Trump was behind it. I don't think there's any way in a million years Trump was behind it. Not in a million years. He has no interest in this. To try to unearth gambling in a sport that may predominantly vote for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, I don't think it matters. And I don't think that's necessarily even the case. Who knows? But especially because that whole kneeling thing, that's so 2017. I mean, just like the wall. You ever hear the president bring up the wall anymore? He doesn't, because he's like, it's going to get done. We're past it. And it's not going to be a big thing. And the more he brings it up, the more problems he'll have. Here's more from the Genovese crime family guy, no longer in the family, Anthony Arreglata, Cup 46.
No, I wasn't surprised at all. This has been going on forever. The sports gambling, casino type games, we've been doing that since the 70s and 80s, as long as I've been around. And we've been having casino night games with, blackjack, slot machines, poker games.
So the thing that they were saying, and I'm not a poker player and I'm proud of it, but they said that when you're a professional poker player, there's a certain rhythm to it. You can tell if someone knows what they're doing. And evidently, when these experienced players would sit down around a table, these guys were putting all their chips in before they even had their hand. And they're thinking, what are you doing? This is the craziest thing ever. And then they kept losing, meaning the experienced guys kept losing. And they get up and they say, what the hell hit me? I know something's wrong here. And one of the guys that said, I know you guys are cheating, got up and left without paying. Basically, he was harassed for 6 months by the mob, and the threats got so great against his family, he finally just paid up. But he knew this was going on. But sooner or later, someone spoke up and spoke out, and I think there might be in damage control. I mean, the guys that they have right now are not the biggest names. And I believe that some people speculate that the Toronto Raptor, the backup player, Porter, that they grabbed was talking. Because he, I think, betted on himself not to score so many points as a reserve player. And he didn't, if my memory serves me correct. Bottom line is he got implicated, got nailed, and they assume he's going to talk. And they just want to work their way up the ladder and see how big this got. But you already got 4 crime families. That's pretty big. And an active coach, which is nuts. Everyone's been suspended. And as Shaquille O'Neal said on Friday, I can't believe these guys could be that stupid. They should be ashamed of themselves for hurting the game. Another point before I move on. I thought when I was talking to Kurt Schilling, because I was waiting for him as we were taping on Friday, I was making small talk with him just to find out where he wanted to go with the whole betting thing. And then I was researching for the segment, and I found out that 2 Guardian pitchers, Pete, did you know this? 2 Guardian pitchers were suspended because of pitches that they threw that people had bet on, and they found them. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So I knew that researching, and he brought it up on his own before the show started. And then he tells me that Michael Franzese was brought out of prison to speak to the Phillies about the dangers of gambling and how you're going to be targeted by the mob. And he goes, I can't believe you booked him. So I let them connect on camera and say, do you remember the last time? He goes, you came and spoke to my team. And we were so scared to death after that and on the lookout. We can't believe, but yet we understand why people would do it.
Yeah, and Francis, to his credit too, he now focuses on college kids. I heard him talk about how he goes seminars in colleges about the dangers of gambling, and he gets so many of them that come to him that he helps them out. Either they have an addiction or they're in a bad way.
See, I get the addiction. So people say, well, if you're making $100 million, why are you gambling with $25,000? Well, it's addictions. Like, you have a family of 4, but yet you did drugs and drove into you drove in the wrong way in traffic. Why would you do that? It's like you're addicted. So I'm not excusing the addiction behavior, but that's typical. It makes no sense because you feed the addiction first. But when you're just doing it to be competitive, or someone comes up to you and goes, yeah, I'll go do that. And then Jim Trusty says, my client, Terry Rozier, doesn't even gamble. What? What are you doing? So if you really don't have a gambling problem and you're making $23 million a year and you're doing something for $25,000, on the promise of something getting bigger than that, but that's pretty much all legal. So if it gets bigger, it just becomes a bigger crime. It's not
There's
like
also the blackmail aspect, because sometimes it may not be about the money. They can have something over a player, and how do you, do this for us?
You go to cops if that happens. If we allow pro players listen to us, if you're being exhorted right now by the mob, go to the cops and tell them what's going on, and maybe you can plot and plan to get out of it while giving up some people. So lastly, just a couple of things. Bill Maher never does not give up some newsworthy things. For example, he likes to pull in politicians. And one thing I heard with Governor Shapiro, I thought Shapiro was going to be good about a few months ago, but Shapiro was like just a program. You hit a button and he just says stuff. Totally programmed. So the other person that the Democrats, is not a high profile, just highly successful, is Governor Beshear. Now, everyone gets mad in Kentucky when I say that he's moderate, because they say he's not moderate. All right, all I can tell you is he's got like 60 to 70% approval rating in a Republican state. At the very least, give him credit for that. So he sits down with Bill Maher, and Bill Maher starts asking some of the questions. Can you focus on the things that matter? And when it comes to trans athletes, what are you doing? Basically, you're for it, you fought against it, you pushed back against it. Your legislature tried to ban men in women's locker rooms, and you fought back against it. Here he is rationalizing it, and then I'll get to other people that have put their hat in the ring already for 2028. Here's cut 45.
You have this very high approval rating in your state, and yet it's a conservative state, and you vetoed 2 gender bills that the legislature overrode. Which will do you well in the Democratic primary. Just briefly describe what those bills were and what your reasoning is on this.
Yeah, those were both bills that mainly addressed our LGBTQ population. They were mean. They were unnecessary. Most of the time, they were meant to score political points and or hurt me in a 2023 election.
What did they say?
They were trying to eliminate different types of therapies, both for adults and for kids. And I think that there can be certain...
You're talking about sex change.
Oh, no, certain limitations, certainly for kids, I think are...
What about girls in sports?
There was a bill on that, but here's the thing. I care too much about sports to want to let government run them. You look at where we were in Kentucky, and we didn't have a single issue that you saw in the rest of the country.
This is so typical. It rarely happens. That's what they said that failed in 2024. Well, it just rarely happens. The Republicans are making it up. It's happening all over. I mean, you have a volleyball player in college the other day. You have this incident again in Virginia. Right now, for whatever awkward period, you don't have anything in here. But by saying, I don't want government to legislate. No, as you're a governor, that's those things you get involved in. You can make a statement on this. Trans people in girls' sports are going to get their own bathroom. You want to provide some money for it, that's fine, but just don't traumatize the girls or ruin their sport. Don't say government doesn't get involved. Since when does a Democrat feel like government can't get involved? Dumb answers to easy questions. So this guy's got a problem. Now, I actually don't even, I'll go against Bill Maher here. I actually don't think that's a good answer for the Democratic primary. I don't. Because Kamala Harris got killed on this. And for those people that want to win the primary and win the general, they know if they get pigeonholed into these situations, they're never going to get out of them. J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Governor DeSantis will just pound them into oblivion. So there you go. Lastly, it looks like Governor Gavin Newsom told CBS, I'd be lying to you if I said, I wasn't thinking about running. And he said after the midterms, and Kamala Harris tells the BBC the same thing. That is a dream answer. Now, Newsom would be more formidable than Harris. But for Harris, who's leading in the polls right now, believe me, Republicans are going to stay out of her way. They should, whatever they do, let Democrats attack her because she's lazy, doesn't study the issues. She has no accomplishments, terrible vice president, awful candidate, and a complainer while blowing over $1 billion in, what was it? Was the name of the book? It's 107 days. In something like 107 days or 207 days, over $1 billion. She ended losing every battleground state, something like 500 plus counties, losing by 80, 90 points in the Electoral College, losing the popular vote, and ending up in debt. So please, if you are a Republican, don't say anything bad about Kamala Harris. Tami Lahren's with us, co-host of the Big Weekend Show from 5 to 8 every day. She's going to be on Outnumbered shortly. Am I in 15 minutes? And you are so loyal to the show. You said, if I have 15 minutes, I'm going to spend it with Brian. And I
have to come see
and
Brian.
And with the listeners.
Yes, with the listeners, with Brian, because that gets me ready for Outnumbered.
Right.
You know?
So you're using me.
Yes.
How dare you?
But listen, I watch you all morning.
Right.
And then I come in and I get to see you in the flesh. And then I go to Outnumbered.
How many times do you look at the television, hear me say something, and say, remind me not to say that?
Brian, I take a lot of inspiration from you.
Really?
And every time I turn on the TV, you're on it.
Right.
So I get a lot of inspiration over the weekend, over the week, the mornings. You're everywhere.
Well, are you enjoying your role? You know, some consistency now, 2 shows every weekend minimum.
6 hours.
Right.
6 hours, and then I'm all ready to go on Monday because we talked about it all weekend long. But, you know, with this news cycle, there's still new stuff that develops overnight, so never a dull moment.
So I pulled this soundbite basically for you. I watched you over the weekend. I know about your background.
Yeah.
Also about, you said farming. I thought farming, you said more ranching when it comes to beef.
Yes.
And what's going on with Argentina. But also when it comes to the farmers, you're very in touch with the agricultural community. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of optimism that they're about to get a deal on soybeans, especially with China. Here's the Treasury Secretary, cut 2.
We have a regular quarterly meeting with the Chinese. It was scheduled for November 10th or before November 10th. I don't think we will have to have that. So we have been rolling the tariffs quarterly. So we agreed on that. We also agreed on substantial agriculture purchases for U.S. farmers. We agreed that the Chinese would begin to help us with the precursor chemicals for this terrible fentanyl epidemic that's ravaging our country. So I would say that it was a very good meeting overall.
And China said something very similar. So how close are the farmers, agriculture community looking at this?
Very much so. There's a lot of, and if you see them, the clips are all over social media. I think they're doing a good job of documenting it. You know, there are so many ranchers and farmers that don't want to be on social media. They don't want to be activists for themselves. They have lobbyists, but not really, especially when it comes to the ranchers. There's not a lot of lobbying for them. Let's just say that. The forgotten Americans, that's them, the ranchers, and then to some extent the farmers as well. But there are a lot of farmers out there that they don't want subsidies, right? They don't want their crops to grow and then be left there. They want to be able to sell them. And we have the best product in the world, both farming and ranching. They want to be able to sell that. They want to be able to feed the American people. So optimistic. I believe that President Trump cares a lot about the farmer and the rancher.
That's why China's targeting them.
Right, of course.
Because they think you're getting to the president's base. So we'll target soybeans, even though we got the best and got the cheapest. Makes no sense. Now, tell me what happened with beef in Argentina.
Well, I'll tell you this. So I was hoping that the administration would reconsider this move to import more Argentine beef. It doesn't look like they are reconsidering it. But what we ask, and I'm trying to speak on behalf of the ranchers here. If there's one group of people that I feel like I can kind of speak for, it's the American rancher. Come from a ranching family. So
right now, your family has a ranch.
Yes. In South Dakota. So what the ranchers want, if you are going to import this foreign stuff, let's just label it. Okay? If the American people want to buy Argentine or Brazilian or Australian or Canadian beef, that's fine. Let the consumer decide. But right now, the ranchers cannot differentiate their product from the foreign imports coming in. So the ranchers being undercut by the meat packers, it's all going into one bin, and the consumer really doesn't know where it's coming from. Now, if you want to buy something that's a little bit cheaper quality and that's okay for you and your family, that's fine. But have a label so you know. But if you are paying a premium price, you should be getting a premium product. And I believe that's American beef.
And also you think that people will buy American if they can.
Yeah, I think most people will. Not not everybody, but I think that the majority of the American people know that we have the best beef on planet Earth, made, processed, produced by American ranchers. I think that if they're able to differentiate their product, this also goes back to the meat packers. The meat packers are getting a giant gift with imported foreign beef.
Why? Why is that better than using domestic beef?
Well, they can undercut the American rancher. So if the rancher can't differentiate their product, the meat packer can set the price, because an American rancher can't say, all right, I have a premium product. It's going to be labeled product of USA. I'm going to demand more for my cattle because I believe it's a superior product. Well, they can't differentiate it. So the meat packer's like, no, I'm going to import this cheaper stuff and I'm going to pay you a cheaper price because I don't have to differentiate your product. So it's the same thing if I can liken it to clothes, right? If you don't know if you're getting Walmart or Gucci, well, of course, the manufacturer is going to take the opportunity when the consumer doesn't know. But there's a big difference there.
It's with so much power that the farmers have. It's amazing they haven't cracked down on the meat packers.
Well, there are antitrust laws on the books that are not being enforced. Now, there was just a big settlement, a Tyson-Cargill settlement, because there was some price manipulation allegedly going on there. They need to be enforced, though. There's 4 meat packers that control the entire market, and that's a big reason why our American ranchers struggle and suffer. Right now, they're finally getting money for their product, and it's like people are like, no, the ranchers are making too much money. Why are ranchers the only group of people who are not allowed to make money?
Well, you mean that people have said that?
Yeah. Like, the beef's too high. These ranchers are getting rich. I promise you, you're watching too much Yellowstone. Most ranchers don't have a private chef and 2 helicopters. They're not driving Mercedes-Benz, okay? Most ranchers are living very humbly, especially in places like where I'm from in South Dakota.
So let's talk about what's happening on the Democratic side. First off, with the predictions, does anyone you know say that the race is closer than you think with Mondami and Cuomo? I haven't heard that much. And the last poll I saw was 12 points. Do you think anything changes? Although the turnout, you live in New York City now, but is anything going to change now because I see this huge turnout? We have 6 million people here, 20% vote. Crazy.
But the people that are most energized are the ones that are showing up to the AOC, Bernie, Mamdani rally yesterday thinking we're going to get free things. And the thing that to me is disheartening is that affordability is a problem. But I remind people, when you start talking about the free buses and the rent freezes and the grocery stores and all these things, free childcare, that sounds good to some people. And when you say you can just tax the rich and get it, that's not really viable anyway. He really can't do that. But even if he could, does everybody want to live in Section 8? What's this free childcare going to look like, right? What is this rent freeze? What is that going to mean for your apartment? Does everyone want to live in Section 8 style housing? I don't think so. So when he says he's going to make things free or affordable, you're not going to be getting luxury for free. I would remind people of that.
$6 billion is going to cost for this healthcare, this childcare program that he has. $652 million for free buses, and it's already he takes over a city that's $17 billion in debt. Where's the money coming from? I'll raise taxes. As a mayor, you don't really have the ability to raise taxes. You might have a compliant governor who feels as though the whole legislature is going left wing, but that's a long way to go. So what he's saying is not going to ever get traction. Here's the key, and you could use this on Outnumbered. You could claim it as your own if you wish. I think Jessica Tisch everyone agrees, is the police commissioner has done a fantastic job. Everybody says, I will keep her if I win. Mondami says it too. But he was also asked, he goes, why would you keep Jessica Tisch? You said you want to reform the police department. You said you want to set up this disciplinary program. She doesn't want to do that. And he says, she will do what I tell her.
Oh.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's not an exact quote, but that's basically she'll do what I want. I'll be the mayor. So if Jessica Tisch, I would not serve a day with him. If she doesn't need the job, it doesn't pay a lot of work, she should say, I will not serve if Mondami wins. I'll finish out the Eric Adams term, but I won't serve. And, Bill Bratton tried to work with de Blasio. He couldn't. He's not going to ruin his reputation on de Blasio. He's a calamity. So how do you think about that as a last minute could make a difference?
I don't know if it would make enough of a difference. It might give some folks some cause for pause. But the big problem here is that the Democrat Party, in this deep blue place where you'd think you'd have real deep benches, the best they could come up with was Cuomo and Mondani.
I know.
That's the alternative. That's the problem here. If there was, and I use this term, good Democrat, if there was a better option for an independent or a Democrat, Cuomo, I don't think you'd be in this position. But they had all this time, and the best they could come up with was Cuomo.
Quick on 2028, Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris said similar things. They're basically going to give it another run in 2028. And I say, hands off Kamala Harris. If you're a Republican, let her go.
Yep.
Now, one critical, you need that terrible candidate to run, because not only is she terrible, she's lazy. And then Gavin Newsom, your thoughts. You lived out there.
Yeah. Gavin's been running for at least the last 4 years. So I don't think anybody's surprised that he's going to run for president in 2028. I think that we need them both. I think we should hype them both up. I would love to see the Democrats make such a horrible decision and nominate either one of them, because I think both of them, we know Kamala is beatable. Gavin is beatable too. There is not a better case for the Republican than look at California.
If you want to look at Tomi Lahren some more, she's going to be talking for at least another hour at the top of the hour on Outnumber. Is that correct?
Yep. I'll
All
be
right.
there.
That's the promo. Tomi, great to see you.
Good to see you.